Welcome to Module 3. It is recommended that you watch the modules in sequential order. Thus, if you have not watched Modules 1 and 2, please access those modules before continuing. All of the modules are readily available on the Principal Partnership Project Google site. Each module is approximately 15 to 20 minutes. In this module, you will continue to learn about the KY PSEL Guidance for Growth and Evaluation tool and explore the structure and content of the resource. As noted previously, this is an optional support tool that schools and/or districts may choose to use. The majority of this session will involve a detailed examination of two sections of the tool: critical attributes and possible examples. We will begin by examining critical attributes. Note the text on the slide. Critical attributes are vital qualities, actions, and/or features that provide description of the elements for each performance level. As there are a multitude of elements per individual standard, the critical attributes for each standard bring out the big ideas embedded within the various elements. The purpose of the critical attributes is to impart general guidance for evaluators and evaluatees regarding the most significant aspects of practice relative to the standard. Critical attributes are broad. Implementation of a critical attribute is unique to the individual school and/or district. On the right side of the slide deck, you will see the critical attributes that Kentucky educators developed. The process to create the critical attributes started with a close look at the standard. For Standard 1, the title is Mission, Vision, and Core Values. The standard statement is, effective educational leaders develop, advocate, and enact a shared mission, vision, and core values of high-quality education and academic success and well-being of each student. Within a standard, there are noticeable big ideas embedded. In the provided example, this standard is holding educational leaders responsible for action that utilizes collaboration, implements best practice, focuses on positive student outcomes, all resulting in shared commitment. After the big ideas of the standard are identified, the next step is to look at elements. Notice A through G. These elements provide guidance of independent actions one would engage in order to meet the intent of the overarching standard. After reviewing the extensive list of elements, the Kentucky team worked to create critical attributes that serve all of the elements for each standard and for each performance level. Let's look at an example to illustrate how elements and the big ideas of a standard inform critical attributes. For Standard 1, the Kentucky team identified 4 critical attributes. To begin, element A informs the third and fourth critical attributes. Looking closely at element A, the importance of the mission being the lever for the success and well-being of each student is prioritized. In turn, that significant focus is also evident in the third critical attribute. Notice the language. Laser-like focus on student academic achievement and social-emotional development. With the focus of the mission designed to support student prosperity, the fourth critical attribute includes the expectation of continuous review and refinement to support the attainment of goals. Now let's examine element B. The content of element B connects the first, third, and fourth critical attributes. Element B is focused on using collaboration and relevant data to expand the school's vision while maintaining a focus on the successful learning and development of each child and on instructional and organizational practices that promote such success. Clearly, the first attribute is about regular collaboration with diverse stakeholders. Thus, the idea of collaboration connects element B and the first critical attribute. The third critical attribute embeds the idea of student growth and improvement. That focus is also evident in element B as the language successful learning and development of each child indicates. Element B also specifically calls out the use of relevant data to develop and promote the, quote, formalized process referenced in critical attribute 4. This is a direct link to the expectation of element B. Moving on to element C, deep thoughtful work is described. Connecting the essential ideas included in element C demonstrates a link to all of the critical attributes. Let's examine the first critical attribute. Including and responding to the input provided by diverse stakeholders is a bridge to connect the ideas of school culture and student support with a focus on equity, inclusiveness, and social justice, as is prominent in element C. The second critical attribute also aligns as the buy-in and commitment within the school and community most certainly positively impacts school culture. The third critical attribute emphasizes the importance of student well-being, just as the phrase child-centered in the element stresses. Lastly, there is a link between element C and the fourth critical attribute. Notice the characteristic of continuous in both. Element D bonds with the fourth critical attribute, as element D requires effective leaders to strategically develop, implement, and evaluate actions to achieve the vision for the school. The last critical attribute incorporates the necessity of using a formalized process grounded in continuous review and refinement. As such, the two are closely connected. An examination of element E demonstrates a connection to the third and fourth critical attributes. The aim of element E is encouraging the practice of formatively assessing and responding with appropriate action. Element E states, review the school's mission and vision and adjust them to changing expectations and opportunities for the school and changing needs and situations of students. Notice in the attributes the focus on school and student success using a process of review and refinement based on need is highlighted. In element F, once again, we see the target of collaboration showcased, but we also note the inclusion of commitment. In the first critical attribute, regular collaboration with diverse stakeholders is described. Then, in the second critical attribute, commitment is identified. Notice the language, and creates buy-in within the school and community. Jointly, the two critical attributes feed into the intent of element F. Lastly, element G is woven by action when modeling and pursuing the school's mission, vision, and core values in all aspects of leadership. Thus, a connection to all four critical attributes is evident for element G. The critical attributes are intended to synthesize the elements and big ideas of the standard. It's important to understand that a variety of elements may inform each critical attribute. Just as Kentucky practitioners developed the critical attributes, they took it a step further and developed a progressive view of the critical attributes. For each critical attribute, there is a progression showcased to reflect ineffective, developing, accomplished, and exemplary practice. Let's examine that progression now. To begin, focus on the text. The font is bold. This bold text indicates it is the accomplished level. The bold text is the goal for performance. Now, let's analyze language from this accomplished level. Regularly collaborates, diverse roles, and validates perspectives with action. This language clearly provides parameters and descriptors for what is expected at the accomplished level of practice. Developing is next. Kentucky practitioners used words like compliance-driven and engage key stakeholders to describe this level of practice. Notice the concept of action in response to stakeholders' feedback is missing in this level. Moving on to the lowest level, ineffective, there is clear language that indicates collaboration is a missing link in the leader's practice. Note the words no and/or minimal. The exemplary performance level exceeds the goal. Observe the language that evaluates performance, prioritizes, retain, and strengthen partnerships, and collaboratively address and assume responsibility are all linguistic clues that project exemplary practice. To emphasize again, accomplished is the goal. With that in mind, it's essential to conceptually understand accomplished practice. What does accomplished look like in practice? How might a school leader or supervisor confirm accomplished practice? A valuable strategy is to collect objective evidence. Objective evidence is grounded in what you see and hear. So let's consider the following. What might you hear a principal say that demonstrates action of the critical attributes? What might you see that brings a critical attribute to life? What artifacts might you examine to deduce the level of application? With those questions in mind, let's review an evidence source that is connected to a critical attribute at the accomplished level. As previously discussed, critical attribute number 1 connects to several elements in Standard 1, specifically elements B, C, F, and G. There are many ways this critical attribute might be applied in the work of a principal. However, let's examine a possible way one might see this critical attribute come to life at the accomplished level. Look at the possible example. Based on high referral rates and a recommendation from the juvenile court designee, the principal, in collaboration with the social worker, proposes to the site-based decision-making council that an evaluation of the school's discipline policies with a focus on trauma-informed care led by the school guidance counselor be prioritized work for the group. As we scrutinize this example to determine correlation to the critical attribute and elements, let's make some obvious connections. Data was used to ground this example. There was a high percentage rate of referrals to the Department of Juvenile Justice, and that resulted in repeated collaboration between the stakeholder and school leader. The stakeholder provided feedback about the need to evaluate the school's discipline policies with a focus on the best practice principles of trauma-informed care. As well, this example includes an additional layer of stakeholder support by involving the school's guidance counselor and a social worker. The core of this example is the proposed recommendation of making this prioritized work for the site-based decision-making group. This proposal verifies the school leader is validating the diverse stakeholder feedback with action. Thus, objective evidence from this possible example might include revised discipline policy notating focus on changing needs of students, high incidence of trauma, record of correspondence with DJJ, social worker, etc., that correlates with action. Also, you could look at trend data of referral rates with corresponding action. Professional learning on trauma-informed care resulting in revised policy. This is just one example of how this leadership practice might be seen or heard and promotes the use of objective evidence demonstrated at goal level. In an attempt to prompt thinking about the standards in action, Kentucky practitioners generated possible examples for all performance levels. It is especially important to note that the possible examples are not a checklist and not exhaustive. The relativeness of the examples will vary from context to context. Let's go a bit deeper with possible examples. As the slide states, possible examples are concrete. They include something you might see or hear. They are not all-inclusive list. They are just what the title infers, possibilities. In some of the possible examples, there might be a specific artifact identified. The artifact referenced is not the most important part of the possible example. Instead, it is how the artifact is used that is critical. Please don't get caught up in a reference to a specific artifact. The usage of the artifact is what distinguishes performance. To ensure there is clarity regarding the difference between a critical attribute and a possible example, the slide shows the two side by side. Let's review the provided critical attribute. The school leader sets clear expectations for the school community on the process and tone for welcoming families and community members into the school. This critical attribute showcases vital action that is focused on ensuring parents feel connected to the school. It is broad in that it merely states clear welcoming expectations are provided to the school community. These welcoming expectations could look one way in one district and look completely different in another district. The crux is that a leadership practice focused on the inclusivity of families is prioritized in practice. Then, questions to consider are, what might this look like in practice? What might be seen or heard that indicates the school leader is successful at making parents feel welcome and wanted? One possible example could be the results from a parent survey. You can visibly see survey results. Note the provided possible example. On the 2018 parent survey, 98% of respondents agreed with the following statement: "When I go to the school, I feel welcome." Once again, this is simply a possible example to showcase evidence of a school leader meeting the big ideas of a standard. Additionally, it is also vital to mention that the possible examples within the Kentucky PSEL Guidance for Growth and Evaluation tool are not permanent fixtures of the tool. The possible examples can certainly be used as a springboard for a school and/or district to generate personalized examples that tightly connect to identified priorities and essential expectations. Thus, you are invited and encouraged to create additional examples that might better fit your context. We hope the possible examples allow you to have productive conversations that create a common understanding of what accomplished practice looks like in your unique setting. In closing, thank you for participating in Module 3. If you have additional questions, feel free to reach out to any KDE employee listed on this slide.